Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm working on an Audi Q7 3-liter TDI engine. The engine code for this car is CRCA, that's Charlie Romeo Charlie Alpha. These V6 diesels suffer from very common issue. The oil cooler seals fail and the oil collects in the valley between both cylinder heads. This exact engine isn't just in the Q7. You will also find it in the Audis like A6, A7, A8 and maybe many more. And also you will find them in VW or Volkswagen, like Touaregs, maybe Tiguans and so on. So if you got a 3-liter TDI from the VAG group, this video will help you too. I will show you step by step how I replace this cooler with the bracket in between. So here you can see the oil being overspilling from the valley because it's collected too much and there's no place anymore to store it in between the valleys and start leaking all over. If you see that black pitch there, that's literally the oil there. So it's like a pool of oil. And it's hard to notice when it starts leaking as there's no easy access to see it. Only if you know the engine, then you can put camera in between the intake manifolds and you will see it. If it's completely black, then you know you got oil. So start by removing this intake pipe that goes to the throttle body. Using 7mm sockets, open these two pipes, the Jubilee clips, and the pipe can come off. Now there's Torx T30 for the throttle body. There's 3 bolts for this. You can leave it there hanging, or if you want you can disconnect it. It's up to you, whichever way you want to do it. Next we need to remove this EGR pipe that goes into this intake pipe. And then there's a 2 Torx T30. It's hard to see it from this angle, but when you're gonna inspect this you will see what I'm talking about. This car has been opened before, so the bolt is slightly different, but the person who did it, they managed to get it Torx T30. Next we disconnect this guide for the dipstick. We can pull the dipstick out, but the guide you can leave it there. Next we need to remove this intake pipe, and there's a 4 5mm Allen keys, 4 bolts for this intake pipe. And you're gonna need long extension. It helps a lot rather than trying to do closer to the bolts. And once all the bolts removed, you can remove this pipe, and you can also see that it's holding together with the secondary throttle body. Now you can start disconnecting all the plugs and wirings and pipes, and it's just plenty. Whatever you see that is around the intake manifold, you just start disconnecting and taking them away, putting them on side. Just good advice is take as much as photos as you can, as later when you're gonna try to put everything back together you will have an issue to understand which pipe goes on top of which one. And sometimes what I come across is when I put one of the pipes or wiring or something, and then I come across and I understand that it meant to go on top of something else. Basically you have to strip everything back on again and start all over. So if you have photos or videos for the reference, that helps a lot. So this coolant pipe, you have to press it and then it slides out. So you can press the red one with the outer black shell and then you can pull them apart. Then next you also need to disconnect the glow plugs, all the wirings for the glow plugs. Also the injectors, you need to disconnect basically everything where you can see. This coolant pipe also. Some of them, if they've never been removed, they're gonna be pretty stiff, so take your time and try not to break anything. Some of these, this obviously on this engine they've been worked before, and a lot of plugs has been broken and then been used with the cable ties, as this injector here we can see with the cable ties held together so it doesn't lose connection. And there's another glow plug there at the back. So that's one side of wiring removed, and you took it on the side. And then next we need to also remove the fuel return pipe from the injectors. So just the centerpiece of each return just lifts upwards, and then you can disconnect the pipe itself from the injector. Just they're quite fragile, I would say, so take your time and just use as much force as possible. Here I'm gonna demonstrate. So this centerpiece, it slides in and then you pull it upwards, and then you can disconnect it from the injector itself. So pull the center and then it comes off like so. Now this breather. Again, if you have a long nose pliers, it's gonna help you a lot in this job. So this bracket here, they're meant to be one Torx T30 bolt on the left side, but people who worked before only left one inside, so I just have to remove one. But if yours not been touched, there should be another one. And this piece slides into the here, so if you try to remove it, just make sure you slide it out without breaking it. Now we can take this bracket for the vacuum regulator off. Now the fuel lines between both banks or both cylinder heads, because this is V6, so you're gonna have everything almost in two. So two fuel rails, and each side gonna have 3 injectors. Then there's a 17mm at the back, and now Torx T30 for this bracket that holds these fuel lines in place. So once you open it, you can wiggle it, or if you want, you can use a 10mm to disconnect these two pipes so they don't hold together. It's gonna help you some time. Next, again, we got some wiring to put on the side, and there's also another glow plug there. So all kind of rubbish has fallen inside. Now we also need to remove this fuel rate pressure sensor, as it's gonna be in our way, and for that I'm using 27mm socket, or if you have 27mm spanner, you can use that as well. Now we need to also remove this junction. This is going to help us to remove the intake manifold, and this pipe that goes to the high pressure pump, we just have to disconnect it from the fuel rail, and we're gonna have to slightly move it away, as underneath it there's one of the bolts that holds the intake manifold in place. So while I was working, I noticed something moving here, and if we look here, even without engine running, there's a coolant coming out of this water pump slash cover, so that I will address at some point later. Now we need to remove this bracket as well from the intake manifold. Then you need to take this rubber cover off from this fuel line. Once that is off, you should have enough space to put like a tin screwdriver, Torx T30 there, to open the one of the bolts that's underneath the pipe. And all the bolts around the manifold is Torx T30. Just take your time, inspect carefully, as it is very easy to miss one of the bolts and then try to move it. And once that's done, the manifold can come out. Just make sure you have all the seals. As you can see, one seal was stuck to the cylinder head, and push them back inside so you don't lose them. Also, another piece of advice, cover all these intake ports, and if you're using some compressed air or anything else, so nothing falls inside there and damages the engine or turbo or something else. So this bracket, actually you don't need to remove it, but for some reason I decided to move it. I can't remember why it was, but yeah, so you can leave it actually there, and that's gonna help. Now we need to disconnect this coolant pipe from the EGR cooler. And remember, if you haven't drained the coolant at the bottom prior you start the job, then there will be coolant coming out of here right now. And I'm using the vacuum pump to try to suck as much coolant as I can. Now we need to disconnect this EGR pipe that goes from the exhaust manifold, I would say, or turbo in this case. It comes from the turbo to the EGR cooler. Disconnect the plug, and now there's a 4 Torx T30 bolts around this EGR cooler that holds EGR cooler and EGR in place. And this is so tight that it starts slipping, and I understand it's not going to be easy to get it off. So I'm using Torx T30 RBRT socket to try to get it off. But that was without the luck, as it keeps slipping. And then I proceed to grab the chisel and the hammer and try to chisel it away. Because all we need is just to make sure that it moves a little bit. Once it moves a little bit, then those bolts coming quite easy off. So I think at some point somebody already removed this EGR cooler and they over tighten it, hence I had struggled to open it. So here you can see it's been chiseled, but nonetheless we'll replace it with the better bolt. Then there's a pipe that goes into the EGR cooler that you need to like disconnect it. Here I'm going to show you. So that's our EGR valve with EGR cooler, and this pipe goes into this hole here, and sometimes it can be a little bit stiff. So here I'm using just a vacuum pump to get as much oil out as I can. Some brake cleaner, cleaning it, drying it, cleaning it, drying it. But and just a piece of advice, you don't necessarily need to use as much cleaning procedure as I did, as when we're going to remove the oil cooler, there will be again oil coming out and the coolant out of it. So you're going to have to clean it again one more time. Then you need to remove these two bolts for this coolant pipe, coolant bracket, as there's a bolt underneath it that we need to unscrew for the oil cooler. And here you can see I removed this coolant pipe and the coolant came off again. And now when that's out of the way, we can move to remove the oil cooler itself. There's 6 bolts around it. So again, all of this seems like a little bit too tight. So somebody was here before. Now we can disconnect this coolant pipe from this oil cooler. And then again, because it was sitting in the coolant and water and oil, I couldn't really get the nice grip with this Torx T30 sockets. So you use a hammer to little bit make sure that it sits nicely and doesn't slip on me. So once all the 6 bolts are removed, you can proceed to remove the oil cooler itself. Just remember, this oil cooler bracket, this contraption, it has to go before you put oil cooler in, otherwise you're not going to be able to fit it afterwards if you put the oil cooler first. Now the oil cooler is off, and here we can see again everything is in oil and coolant. So the time I spent the last time to cleaning it, basically it went waste of time, but nonetheless I can clean it again. It's not a big problem. And now we can remove this oil cooler bracket. Again, it's a couple bolts around with the Torx T30. And again, once we remove this bracket, there will be oil and coolant leaking out again. So just something to keep in mind. This was a little bit stuck to the cylinder block. While with a little prying, it came loose. And here we can see how bad it looks. And that's why there was oil collecting, and this seal already has broken off. That's why there was oil collecting in this valley here. Again, I used some cleaning once more. Now you can see the new bracket with all the seals sitting nicely in. First we're gonna install this bracket. Again, we install back these Torx T30 bolts. I do not have a spec how tight they should be. Some good and tight, I would say. Maybe like 12 Newton meters, something like that. Now we can put this this coolant regulator valve with these brackets in. So again, this has to go first before you put the oil cooler inside, otherwise you're not going to be able to fit this one afterwards. And if you ask me how I know, because I did that couple first cars, I was excited to put the new part inside and I forgot about this one, and then I had to remove it off again. Not necessarily you need to tie these bolts for that oil or for the coolant regulator there. Otherwise, now I'm gonna have a little struggle to get one of these bolts for the oil cooler itself. The new oil cooler can go inside. First you fit this coolant pipe on it, like so, and now you can locate the cooler itself onto the cooler bracket. There is like actually slots where it sits nicely and fits. Now you can put all the 6 Torx T30 bolts. I also use help of the magnet to locate these bolts. This is hard to put your hand inside there to get them into the slot. So the socket wasn't going inside there because of this pipe, because I tightened it. So I did mistake that I know already before. But because I have a screwdriver Torx T30, I use the pliers and just torqued it down so it sits nicely. Now I can connect this hose clamp back onto this coolant pipe. You can use WD-40 or some grease to make sure they slide more easy on, so you don't struggle as I am here. And just here where the arrow is, you have to put this bolt now inside prior to putting the EGR cooler on. Otherwise afterwards you're not going to be able to do that. So here I can put in EGR cooler, but if you see the bolt is there, and I did not film it that moment where I'm putting it, but yeah, so when you're putting this cooler inside, make sure for that coolant control valve you put that one bolt inside, and the other bolt, it goes on top through this EGR valve itself. So through the EGR valve, through the coolant control valve into the cylinder head. And one long bolt on this side and another one long one, and there where's that coolant regulator valve there, and 2 smaller ones on this side. So here you can see I found the 10mm bolt, the replacement for the other one that I had to chisel it. So the thread's exactly same, the length was same, only thing that the head instead of Torx T30 now is gonna be 10mm. And you torque the EGR cooler with the EGR valve down. Now we can put this bracket for this EGR pipe. Connect the EGR valve back, and now we can put the intake manifold back inside. So I use just a clean rag to clean the surface where the intake manifold sits, where all the seals are, just in case there's some debris or something that presses the gasket away and it's gonna start leaking. Now we put all the bolts around the manifold and we torque the manifold down. And again, you can use the magnet to help you to locate these bolts. Sometimes it's hard to get your hands there. Now this fuel line back. So inlet manifold bolts, if anybody requires, is just 9 Newton meters, so 9-10 Newton meters for all the bolts around the intake manifold. And that should be good. And here I split the both fuel lines. For me it was more easy to locate them back in their location. And here's the bracket that holds both of them together. It's a 10mm bolt there. And for this left bracket is just Torx T30 again. Now let's not forget to tighten these fuel lines. It's coolant pipe extension. The bracket that I remove, I don't know for what reason I remove it, but basically you don't need to remove it, but if you did like I did, then now it's a good time to put it back together. Connect all the vacuum lines that you can connect now. Put this rubber protection for the fuel line back on. Now the bracket for the vacuum regulator. Bracket for the wiring looms. Now this bracket for the pipes and the wiring. So this is the moment where it's gonna come handy if you have all the photos for the reference where did where go, as it's really tricky to understand which pipe goes on top, especially if you don't do these jobs on everyday basis. So yeah, take as much photos as every angle as possible. Trust me, you will thank me later for this. And so from this stage you just connect everything back as where it was. Like here I'm struggling with this fuel return pipe to understand which way where it was going. Now this clip, let's not forget it. So that's secure. Now the wiring loom, slowly we can connect in all other wirings that goes around this manifold. I have to be honest, this part of working on jobs like this where this wiring is not locating itself in this slot and you have to remember it, or you have to work it out where did what go where, it's quite annoying for me, but it's part of the job, so what can you do? So yeah, if you have photos for the reference prior you remove it, definitely use them, as it's gonna help you it's gonna help you a lot, saving time. Now the breather as well. Now this fuel rail pressure sensor. The fuel return line to the injectors. this vacuum line or breather, the wiring for the glow plugs. Just make sure they clip on, otherwise you're gonna have fault codes. And I put some multi-purpose grease, so these coolant pipes slides more easy in, and none of these seals get trapped while you're trying to locate them. So this throttle body goes together with this pipe, as they share the same bolts. So once you locate it, you locate the other one, you apply slight pressure, and you locate at least one of the bolts. Once that's done, you can then locate all other 3 bolts. Now this EGR pipe that goes from the EGR, I would say cooler side EGR to this intake pipe. And again, you can use a magnet here to help you to locate those bolts there at the back. And now the bracket to secure to this intake pipe. So prior you torquing those 2 bolts on the other side of the pipe, make sure you locate this pipe on this side on, and you put the bracket on. And now once that's done, you can torque these bolts back. So the dipstick can go back inside, the bolt for the dipstick. Now this throttle body can go. Also I can advise, you don't need to disconnect the pipe from this throttle body, as the bolts is from this side. So basically if you remove just the bottom side of this intake boost or intake pipe, whatever it is, whatever you call it, then you can disconnect all these pipes, and then you just need to slide this side, and this end would stay same on. But both ways working, and literally just maybe 20 seconds extra job. So whichever way, you can do it the way I did it, or whatever way you prefer it. Now you can put the fresh coolant in. Fresh oil. So yeah, if you do this job, you can replace the oil and oil filter as well, as there's possibility that the oil is gonna get contaminated with the coolant. It might take time to start it, as we disconnect the fuel lines and fuel lines, so they are empty. So it's gonna take time till it starts. There, once it's started, you check for the leaks inside again if you shine the camera, and if you don't see any leaks within like 5 minutes, you're good to go. You can put the cover back on, make sure you got hot air inside the car, and close the coolant expansion tank, and job is done. Now forget the tray underneath as always. But on this we have come to an end of another everyday value mechanic video. Thank you all for watching, for your subscriptions and likes and comments. It really helps the channel a lot, and I'll see you soon on the next video. Your valued mechanic out.